Hello everyone, TimeToGrind here, and today I wanted to talk about the recent announcement Hi-Rez Studios made that its three main games, Paladins, Realm Royale, and Smite, will have cross-play and cross-progression in the near future. And what does that mean? Well, it obviously means that you'll have kind of one account that you can link all of these accounts to, and if you unlock these characters on one platform, they'll be there on the other platform, and you can play with people on other platforms, so kind of like what we saw with Fortnite. And there's a lot to talk about in this kind of news story, especially when it comes to the fact that it's applying to three different games and three different genres. But the first thing I want to talk about is a lot of people in the news, when I've been seeing people talk about this, is they just talk about how bad and terrible Smite, Paladins, and Realm Royale is, and there's no reason they're doing this. They have no players. It's just a last-ditch effort. And to that, I want to say, although you might not enjoy these games a lot, they are popular games. Smite just kind of has been consistently decently popular. It's never really died down or anything like that. Paladins is actually pretty popular. It's obviously no Overwatch, but the fact that it is free does have it has its advantages. It has a pretty big player base. It's one of the top like 20 games played on Steam at any given moment most of the time. And Realm Royale, it kind of blew up and then it kind of faded into obscurity. It's still a little popular, but I haven't been following it too much. But they're all still relatively popular, and them putting in cross-play and cross-progression isn't just a last-ditch effort to make these games popular. It's kind of a stupid argument I've heard. There's no reason they would put that much work into just trying to save the games. And, I mean, they don't need saving. Most of these games are pretty popular on their own, and this is just kind of an added bonus. And we've seen, like I said, Fortnite doing this a lot. I mean, Fortnite was so huge and it was so heavily pushing cross-platform between everything, whether it was PC, Mac, Nintendo Switch, Xbox, phones, iPhones, Android phones, and all this stuff. And it was such a big of a push that they even got PS4 to kind of back down on their stupid practices. Because if you don't know, Sony really stupid with cross-platform, and not only were they not allowing cross-platform with all the other things, so while Switch and Xbox and PC and phones were all playing together, you couldn't play on PS4 cross-platform. But not only that, if you logged into your account on a PS4, so say you were an Xbox or PC player, and you went over to your friend's house and you logged into his PS4, you just couldn't play. You couldn't use that account on any other platform besides the PS4. So they literally held accounts hostage, and Fortnite was so big they were able to get Sony to actually back down on that, but Sony still has this stupid kind of policy with cross-play and cross-platform stuff, and that is why with this, all of these three games, the cross-play that's going to be supported is going to be on their PC launcher, and then PC and Mac on Steam, the Nintendo Switch, and Xbox One. And they said, we are technically ready to support cross-play on other platforms as the opportunity arises. So that's kind of talking about Sony's PlayStation. They're kind of like, hey, you know, whenever you're gonna stop being stupid, we can do cross-play with you. And then, of course, it's also talking about future consoles or whatever. Whether, you know, we see a new Xbox released anytime soon, they're saying, we have the technology where we can put cross-play on that too, which is pretty nice. It's nice to know that, okay, well, you know, if a new game comes out or a new console comes out, I can play the game on that new console. And it's pretty awesome. And they actually have a huge FAQ on their website talking about the crossplay whole thing. So you have the basics of it, just cross progression, how every little detail works. And some of the things I wanted to talk about, because I have seen a lot of different arguments going on, is this one question here. It says, how will this impact the separate PC and console esports scene? And it says, in 2019, we will continue to support separate and dedicated Smite and Paladins esport leagues on PC and console, which is kind of good because, you know, say you look at Overwatch. Overwatch has drastically different metas in PC and console. They're balanced completely different and all of these things. And so it sounds like they're like, yeah, don't worry about it. We're still going to have separate things like that. But by having these cross-platform ways, you can't really have separate balance changes. So if Paladins players can both play with each other, if someone on an Xbox can play with someone on a PC, you can't balance the game separately on those platforms, because then cross-platform doesn't work. So I think in terms of them talking about that, it's going to be like, yeah, we'll have a league for PC where everybody's playing on mouse and keyboard, and then we'll have a console one where everybody's playing on a controller. But that's going to be the extent of it, because you can't balance them separately when they are on cross-platform. And they even say, how will you handle cross-platform matchmaking? Because that was a big thing with Fortnite. Because, if you're playing on a phone, let alone, a controller or something like that, if you play up against someone on a keyboard and mouse on PC or Mac, you're at a massive disadvantage, especially for games like Realm Royale or Paladins, where they're, shooters. And so they say, by default, casual matchmaking will find the best matches for players regardless of platform or input method. Smite and Paladins players can choose to play only against players with the same input method. So say you're playing on a controller and you only want to play with people on a controller, you can do that in casual matches. However, players will find higher quality matches more quickly by leaving cross input matchmaking enabled. And that's obvious. You're going to play, if there's a bigger pool of people to play with, you're going to obviously have better matches. But that doesn't take into account, well, I'm getting destroyed because this guy has keyboard and mouse. And it also says Smite and Paladins ranked matchmaking will be divided strictly by input method. Players will only ever play against other players using the same input method in ranked. And so that kind of makes sense. If you're playing ranked on one of these, you don't want to even have the chance to play up against somebody that's just using keyboard and mouse and could just destroy you. And then it says Realm Royale players will always be placed in cross-platform matchmaking. And that's what confuses me, because between the three games, Realm Royale, Smite, and Paladins, Realm Royale seems like one of the more important games to have a distinction between keyboard and mouse and controller. And I don't know if they're doing that because Realm Royale is not doing that hot right now. Like I said, it blew up and then it kind of faded into obscurity. So I'm wondering if that is honestly a last-ditch effort for this game in particular, because the game's not popular and they're wanting to just force it no matter what. And they're just saying, this is a casual game. It's not going to be a competitive game. Just a casual battle royale. Players are going to have whatever. And I can kind of understand. I can also understand the argument of, well, it's a battle royale game, so you have all these players, and say you're playing on a controller, a lot of the people in the game will have controllers and you'll be able to fight them. It's not like, okay, well, it's a 5v5 match, we all have controllers, they all have keyboards, there's no chance we have to win. In Realm Royale you will have some chances to get kills and stuff like that, especially just because of how RNG based battle royale games can be. But I have a problem with how this is going to work, because like I said, you can't have separate balance changes. You can't have a separate PC meta and a separate console meta in terms of balance patches if you have cross-platform. So that's like in Overwatch days. One of the best examples I have is in the beta days, there was a point in time where Torbjorn was so OP on consoles. It was ridiculous. And I guess this wasn't beta days because console didn't have a beta, but just early Overwatch days. But Torbjorn was ridiculously strong on consoles, and he was not strong at all on PC, because the reason he was strong on consoles was because the turret had auto aim, and because it's a little harder to aim on consoles, something that auto aims other players is very strong. So they ended up having to completely nerf Torbjorn in the console meta and the patch, and then they buffed Torbjorn in the PC patch. And that's a really good example of, well, there's different limits and there's different metas in these games, so you got to balance them separately, but you can't do that when you have cross-platform. And for a game like Fortnite, I think it's wonderful to have cross-platform because of the fact that it is a battle royale and it's more of a casual game. I want to say it's not like a super 5v5 competitive game. You're playing a game, even if you're on a phone, you still have a chance to get some kills and stuff like that, even if you're playing up against PC players, because you could flank somebody or you can catch somebody by surprise or anything like that. And so I can understand them doing it in Realm Royale, but Smite and Paladins is what confuses me a little bit. And they do say, you can choose your input method, which is good, but I don't know why they're not putting it on the Realm Royale game. So overall, I think the huge push to cross-platform play and progression is a really good thing. I think it is really, really, really important, and I think it's one of the better things coming out of the gaming industry lately. But I feel like you have to kind of take caution. You have to be very cautious with how you do it, because in a game like Smite and Paladins, Smite not so much, because there's a kind of limitations on how much better someone with a keyboard and mouse can be on a controller. But a game like Paladins is so drastically different on a console versus keyboard and mouse, and I feel like forcing yourself to not be able to balance them separately is going to possibly be very bad in the future. And although I think it is really important to have cross-platform, I think at certain times you might have to just say, okay, well, maybe we just have cross-progression. So if you own the heroes on the PC, you'll own the heroes on console, but they're going to be separate. They're going to have separate balance patches, and I think you can link them with having one account in cross-progression, but maybe not necessarily having cross-platform play in a game like Paladins. Like I said, I can kind of understand it with Smite or even Realm Royale to an extent, but I still wish you could choose how you play with the input method, because you can't even do that at all with Realm Royale as far as we know. But this isn't going to take effect for a couple of months, so they could change things, obviously, and hopefully by the time they do, it will, Sony might be less stupid and they'll allow it on the PS4. But overall, I'd love to hear your guys' opinions on it, because overall, I've heard a lot of people being very positive about this, and I think for a good reason. Cross-platform is a really good thing, and I haven't heard too many people talk about the kind of issues that not allowing your game to have two different patches, how much that can harm a game, especially like Paladins. Just imagine Overwatch if there wasn't a separate PC and console client. That would be pretty bad. So if you guys have any opinions on that stuff, let me know in the comments down below. If you guys enjoyed this video, then consider leaving a like down below and subscribing to see more content. New videos come out every Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. And like always, guys, I hope you guys have a great rest of the day.